Hi everybody, this is Celeste. I'm a nationally certified interventionist and I'm a recovery coach, and we're here for Mondays with Miley. We sure are. This is Mondays with Miley. That was quite the introduction. I had her sitting like a good co-host. She was sitting and being a good girl, and now it's just a gong show. Welcome to the gong show. That is Mondays with Miley. So yeah, I want to talk, if Miley will let me talk. That's her. Today it's horses. She's done a really good job with the horses, and she's over there keeping an eye on them now to make sure that they're being well behaved, and if they're not, she's gonna give them what for. So if you hear her barking, we might actually show you how we do the stop sit con. So she's over there being well behaved now, but we can actually show you if she gets excited, and she's doing pretty good. Anyways, so we're going to talk a little bit about prevention today. So last week, some of you might know Miley hurt herself a little bit last week, and she was running for a toy, and she yelled, and she was not quite herself for about a day after. She wasn't as active. She was reluctant to do stairs and getting up on the bed and stuff. So we kind of did some stuff to, I reduced her activity. I blocked off the stairs so she couldn't do stairs. But she's fully recovered now for the most part. But I want to take her in, and where she's going to go in for some x-rays at the vet, because between that and a couple other things that I've noticed with her, I have a feeling that she might be prone to hip dysplasia, which is quite common to bigger dogs. And so basically what happens with hip dysplasia is there's some issues in the hip joints, and it can cause pain, it can cause muscle deterioration in the back end. It can cause them to be reluctant to jump up on beds, do stairs, things like that. Anything that involves increased pressure on the back end, things like that. And so yeah, and some grating. So sometimes you'll hear or feel grating in the hip joints. And so Miley, just with her yelping the other day and having some difficulties, and I could kind of tell it was in her hips. So between that, and sometimes she is reluctant to jump up on the bed. She does good with stairs, but she's reluctant to jump on the bed and to jump in the back of the SUV. So she kind of does this thing where she gets her front end up and then kind of shimmies her back legs up. So, and she's big enough that she should be able to jump on the bed and jump into the back of the SUV without much issue. So, and she does get a little bit of grating in her back end. So we're going to take her in for x-rays, and I'm probably really hypersensitive to this because any of you that know my last dog Winston, I adopted him when he was 12, and when I got him, he was in really bad shape with the hip dysplasia. He was a bigger dog. He was a Pyrenese retriever cross. So he was a bigger dog and prone to the hip dysplasia. And when I got him, he was at the SPCA. I started off fostering him to help him rehab a little bit in the back end, to hopefully give him a better chance of adoption. And when he was at the SPCA, he couldn't even stand up on his own. And he had, so when I got him, they'd had him for a week or so, and I took him home to help him improve. And so he had the really severe muscle degeneration in the back end, very thin in the back end. You could feel his spine and his hips. He had a really hard time going from laying down to standing up. Running, he couldn't run. He couldn't obviously horseplay or things like that. He had a hard time sitting, so I never asked him to sit because that just wasn't fair. He would sit on his own if he had a really good day. So yeah, he had some issues. We worked really, really hard with him when I first got him. Actually, the whole time I had him, and he improved just exponentially. And one of the things that the vet told me when I took him in to reevaluate some of his medications and stuff, she said, like, you can tell this guy's had a really rough life, and watching him struggle with that was just heartbreaking. Like, just seeing how bad off he was and how much he struggled, and it's still He died, 11 months ago. He passed away. And just watching him struggle and watching, and he never let it impact him. Like he never complained. He always had this great big smile on his face. And every time we left the house, it was like his sole mission in life to love everybody, he wanted to make friends of everybody he met and just love on everybody he met. Like he was just this amazing dog. Like he never let his health issues turn him into a bad person. Like he never got angry. I get teary-eyed talking about it because he struggled a whole lot. And that's why, like, when I started seeing some of these, and it's nothing major in Miley. It's just a few things that I've noticed that she might be predisposed. So it's important for me to get her in and do some preventative stuff, right? And that's super important. And after this video, I'm going to post some information on hip dysplasia and some things to look for, because I really feel like and that's one of the things that I said in a post I did earlier today on another group, is that Winston would want his story to help another dog, or to help another dog parent help their family member to get help with this in an early stage. So and Miley's not even 2 yet, and so I mean, if she is predisposed, I want to do everything I can to not have her struggle like Winston did. So because it's heartbreaking, right? And a lot of it is predisposition in larger breeds, and you can't prevent all of it, but you can hopefully like do some stuff with food and supplements and exercise and things like that to mitigate how bad it gets. And he was really severe, and it's just heartbreaking to see a lovely dog struggle like that. So I do want to get her in. I do want to make sure if there's nothing wrong, great. If there is something that that she's predisposed to, we want to do everything we can to be preventative. And I think that it translates in so many ways. I think we have to do like a lot of preventative stuff with our health, taking care of ourselves, eating well, exercising. I mean, that applies to people too. We've got to do all those things to make sure that we're healthy and active for our whole lives and can be happy. And I was even thinking about how that applies to our mental health and keeping up our relationships and our recovery. And I talked about this even in my story a little bit earlier today about being very proactive and things that happen. I mean, life happens on a daily basis, and we go through challenges, and we have stuff that happens that can cause us to struggle with mental health. And like even I was talking earlier today about having to set boundaries, and the situation I was going through, trying to set boundaries, and it's been impacting my mental health. And I've been guilty of letting it go on for too long, and I know better. Like I know that the consequences of not setting boundaries for me are I get more anxious. All those things that go along with anxiety start to impact me. And I've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of not doing preventative stuff for my mental health. And I'll admit it, and I'm 4 years in, and it's important for me to share that, because we do, when we're in recovery, we have to be almost more diligent about protecting our mental health, because we're a more vulnerable population, right? And if Miley and or Winston are more vulnerable to things like hip dysplasia, we've got to do extra work with them to make sure that they can be healthy and active their whole lives. And I think it's the same with mental health. And I think even with things like COVID, right? Like we do have epidemic rates of anxiety and depression in our society already, because we're not doing prevention. We're not teaching kids in school about coping mechanisms and how to cope with anxiety and depression, and managing situations, because it doesn't matter who you are, situations are going to come up in life that are going to add to depression or anxiety. And if we have a genetic predisposition to the stuff already, and then something comes up like COVID or trauma or loss of a job, a divorce, a dysfunctional family, I mean, the list goes on and on. or poverty, economic stress, right? You throw these into the mix and have somebody with that perhaps genetic vulnerability or vulnerable because of their upbringing, you know, it's a recipe for disaster. And, you know, it causes a lot of unnecessary suffering if we're not doing that preventative stuff and really setting ourselves up and setting our kids up, because it's inevitable that if we live long enough, we're going to have a crisis of some sort, whether, you know, domestic violence or poverty or loss of a job, COVID, rape, you know, the violent death of a loved one, a loss of a child. I mean, chances are, like, you know, none of us get out of this unscathed. So, you know, it's important to really have solid mental health in the first place, and to really set people up to be, to have that resistance. So, and prepare them. So when this stuff does come up, you know, I was even reading about the World Trade Center bombings and, you know, that kind of crisis, you know, having people almost prepared that, you know, if a crisis happens, this is how you take care of yourself in a crisis. So that's super important. And, you know, we have emergency plans. We do fire drills. We do, at my work, we do drills all the time for our OSH committee. You know, what do we do if there's a tornado? What do we do for severe storm warning? And so we do that for all these physical emergencies. You know, then we have something come up with our mental health. We have a crisis with our mental health, and all of a sudden it's a dumpster fire, right? Because we are at a loss as far as how to handle these mental health crises, because we haven't been prepared with mental health drills, right? So, you know, we'll protect our physical safety, but we won't set ourselves up to deal with mental health crisis. So super important. So I think prevention, you know, prevention is a huge key. And, you know, I'm notorious for overthinking stuff, which gets me into a lot of trouble with mental health, and even in my addiction, I'd overthink stuff to death. And you know, even with, you know, Miley potentially being predisposed to hip dysplasia, I've decided to overthink that and apply it to so many other things. But, you know, I think that's good too, right? To be able to apply situations and the wisdom that comes from that and into other situations. And that's what I love about Miley is she's the world's biggest goofball. You know, I call her Goofy Goo all the time, but, you know, she also presents a lot of wisdom, man. Like, she keeps it simple. She keeps it real. You know where you stand with Miley. You know, and she's a lot like Winston. You know, when she goes out into the world, her sole purpose is to love everybody she meets. And she actually almost loves people a little too much. Like, we met one of the neighbors here the other day and met him for the first time, and like, she was just loving on him. She was cuddling with him and giving him hugs and like trying to jump into his truck. Like, she'd never met this guy before, and she's trying to jump into his truck and go for a car ride. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, Miley, like, you know, she ever, you know, and hounds are notorious for escaping. So, I mean, she'd run up to any Tom, Dick, or Harry and jump into the truck and drive away with them, right? Like, you know, she'd be a willing participant in a kidnapping. So, you know, no stranger danger for her, man. But, you know, I love that spirit in her, and I love that she's just willing to love anybody and everybody that she meets. She doesn't come with any bias or judgment. She just, you know, if you're a willing participant, man, I'll bloody love you. And I dig that about her. And Winston was very much about that too. So anyways, that's my long-winded overthinking Miley Mondays with Miley moment. And yeah, so when I'm done this video, I am going to post some information on hip dysplasia for you dog lovers out there who have dogs and want a little bit of information. I know it's not recovery related, but, you know, like I said, if I think Winston would love if his story and his struggle could help someone else help their furry family members. So I will post that. So I hope you read it and, you know, even pass it on. Please pass it on for Winston. Thanks for joining in, everybody, for Mondays with Miley. And as you can probably hear, Miley is very busy right now. She's working on a bone, and so she says thank you very much for joining us. And this is Mondays with Miley tuning out. Thanks for joining in. We love you all.